the first time we were in touch
Yeah.
was probably a couple of years ago now. I posted something on Instagram saying nutrition is confusing. You hear conflicting opinions, and this is a reason why I haven't spoke to a nutritionist on the podcast, right? Then you stepped up in the DMs and you said, "Excuse me, sir."
Subtly though.
Subtly. No, you did, of course.
Politely.
Yeah, of
Always
course.
polite.
Of course. And this is where I was first introduced to this term, intuitive eating. What is intuitive eating?
Ooh, how to pull intuitive eating down in a sentence. Intuitive eating is a non-diet approach to health. So when I say non-diet, it means that there's no counting, there's no tracking, there's no reliance on external rules around food. So it's all about connecting back with your hunger and fullness cues and your satisfaction cues and understanding what your body needs and then responding to that based on what your body tells you. So I feel like nutrition is so confusing because we've totally lost touch with what we actually need. Like, it's all based on eat this but don't eat that, have this many calories at this day of the week but then change to this many calories. Like, it's just so confusing. Whereas if we can increase our inner attunement and then respond to that with external health values, it makes it way less confusing. So intuitive eating actually takes out that confusion. It's not as mind-boggling for people. So it was developed by 2 dietitians in the US in the 90s. So it's an evidence-based approach to health and well-being. So we've got over 140 studies, I think, at this stage, touting its benefits. So things like less disordered eating, more body satisfaction, more self-esteem, better variety of foods eaten, lower BMI, lower body fat percentage. We can see all of these things with intuitive eaters. And if you want to think of an intuitive eater, the best thing is to think of a baby. So you have a baby.
Yeah.
So think about when she cries. She needs to be fed. And when she's fed, it's all fine. Everything works out.
Yeah.
And when she doesn't want to eat something or she's full, they will turn their head from side to side or spit.
Yeah.
That is an intuitive eater. But over time, we lose that connection to the body.
Now, she does eat plastic, though. Your move.
Well, the brain isn't fully developed yet, Kevin.
I'll give it that. Yeah, that... but could an argument be, just because I don't know much about this subject, that what happens then if someone just eats whatever they want and because they're eating with their intuition?
Yeah.
So doesn't that mean that someone will just continue eating constantly because we're hardwired to seek high calorie foods? Obviously, we moved a lot more than we do now, and now we don't move, but we still want those calories. So how do you counter that?
Yeah, it's the biggest misconception. My brother says to me, let's say I don't spend that much time around my brother and he doesn't really understand what intuitive eating is. And he said one day, if I listen to what my body tells me, Niamh, I'm just going to eat pizza all the time. It's this myth or misconception that most people worry about. It's if somebody tells me to eat whatever I want, I'm just going to eat pizza and chocolate and takeaway. But actually, through all of the confusion and through dieting, which is rampant in diet culture, we're told that certain foods are bad for us. So instantly, if you tell someone that they can't have something, they instantly want it more. We're humans, and that happens with everything. So think about last Christmas when we were let out for those 6 weeks and everyone went a little bit batshit cray.
As the kids say.
Yeah. And, we were booking dinners in and, we were going for all of the drinks and we couldn't get enough of being out because we had been previously restricted for the last, however many months. And we had the threat of future deprivation. So we all knew we were going to be locked down in January. Everyone knew it was going to happen. And that was a perfect storm to invite it all in. And that's exactly what happens with food. So all of this restriction around we shouldn't eat that much chocolate and we shouldn't eat that much takeaway. And this is what happens when clients come to me. They're like, Niamh, if I eat what I want, I'm never going to stop eating the cookies. I'm just always going to eat the cookies. And then after time, like I've had clients come into session with me and say, when they hit that point of starting to invite more nourishing foods in. So they might come in and say, Niamh, I made this gorgeous salad during the week and it was amazing. And I'll ask them, that's so great. Like, and who told you to do that? Me. I told me to do that. I didn't ever give a direction to go off and make a salad. But as you start to allow all of these foods in, like pizza and takeaway and cookies, and remove the restriction, naturally the body starts responding with signals that actually these foods don't make me feel that great. I can eat them every day for 3 weeks if I want, but we're connecting with how these foods make us feel in our bodies. And if you really listen to that, you can't ignore how it makes you feel. So the body will start craving other foods as well.
Yeah, this dichotomous thinking of black and white, good and bad, this is a good food, that is a bad food. Someone I know who has a young child, the kid, he has a few of the kids actually, but they don't eat any sweets at home, nothing at all. And then when they were at a party, they experienced sugar and they completely lost it. And I am guilty of this in a way that we don't have goodies in the house. But then our daughter was out recently and she experienced ice cream, you know, and she just, someone had an ice cream in their hand and she just threw a gob on the ice cream basically. And part of me, I like to be, I think I kind of want a lot of control in my life. And part of me was a bit like, oh no, she's eating ice cream now. She's going to just be eating ice cream all the time. But I see the pattern now of why that can be destructive. If I go to my mum's house, for example, she's got goodies everywhere. If I have one biscuit, the whole packet's going. Yeah. Like I can't just have one. Because in my head, I'm thinking, well, look, Kev, you're always good. So now is your chance to, and even this is a confession that I haven't actually said before. Like me and Rach, we have quite a strict diet. I'll sometimes like drive past the shop and just go in and eat 2 chocolate bars in the car, and then like bin the wrappers. And so I feel like crying. I just like confess something. Forgive me, Father, I've sinned. But do you see? So is this what you call is that emotional eating?
Okay, so what you just described, Kevin, is something that most people experience, but we never talk about.
It sounds so trivial, though.
Yeah, but is it though? Like, I speak to so many people that maybe they're on that initial spectrum of, like you just said it, maybe it's not that big of a deal, it might happen every so often, or like I've spoken to people who this has happened over and over and over and over, and it's very distressing and nobody knows about it because there tends to be a lot of shame around food. And like I would work with a lot with binge eating, and binge eating can be subjective, as in to the outside world it wouldn't seem like a large quantity of food. So let's take 2 bars of chocolate, right? So it wouldn't be considered objective binge eating, but to that person they feel a sense of a loss of control. They can't control themselves once they get their hands on the biscuits or the chocolate. And there's a few different layers that you need to work through. So like, I call them the physical, mental and emotional layers. And people that like, just if somebody has a binge, it doesn't mean they have an eating disorder. So like physically, it might just mean that we need to remove restriction, or we might need to make sure that the body is nourished. So say, for example, a rule that was going around for a while is, you know, don't eat too many carbohydrates because carbohydrates will make you fat. Let's boil it down here. That's basically what the messages were for a few years. But our body runs best on carbohydrate. We need carbohydrate at every meal. And what I see a lot is if someone is not eating carbohydrates at every meal because of the fear of carbohydrates, they will be binging when they get access to foods like chocolate, cookies, cakes, takeaways, because their body is in a state of hunger. So the physical need is not met. And then it might feel very intense and distressing and like emotional overeating, but it might not have any emotional connotation at all. Now, it can be the case that it could be emotional eating as well. But like, I would often work through physical layers of people first. Then I will go through mental layers. So I'll look at their mindset and behaviours and attitudes around food and see what kind of restriction is there and try to reframe that and remove it. And then if binging is still persisting, then I'd be looking at emotional layers. So I can sometimes deal with that. Like, I'm studying psychotherapy as well, so it's very therapeutic space. But if, maybe trauma comes out, maybe there's some undealt with trauma because food creates primary safety. It's an unconscious belief that food creates primary safety. It's like back to when we were a baby and we're sad and we get fed and everything's better, black and white.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. So it's then at that case I might refer out. I might decide, okay, maybe this is something now that you need to bring into the therapy space. Food is always the symptom. It's not the root of the problem. So it's like a spider's web, trying to figure out for someone, I have 2 bars of chocolate in the car on the way home. Like, there could be a number of reasons why that is, but a lot of times it's just due to restriction.
I heard I think it was a podcast about a lady who was obese, and she sought out a lot of therapy, and what it boiled down to was she was sexually abused when she was young, and she became obese to make herself feel unattractive, so she didn't want attention again. And then she lost the weight, but once she lost the weight, it was only a short amount of time. Someone paid her a compliment. A man paid her a compliment saying she looked gorgeous or something, and that triggered her to then overeat again and put the weight back on. Is that a common? I know it's a difficult subject to talk about, but this blew my mind. Is this something have you heard before?
Yeah, multiple times, especially around trauma and sexually related trauma. Because if we tie into diet culture, and this is like a conversation that I could speak about for ages, but I'm really interested in feminist theory and patriarchy and how for hundreds of years, women have been valued on their appearance, and boys have been taught, whether that is indirectly, that that's where women's value is placed. So it's as a protective mechanism. It's if I am bigger than the beauty ideal, men won't look at me, and therefore I will be protected from future instances of sexual harassment and further traumas. Like the mind, you just can't disconnect the mind and the body. Like, they're so interconnected. But yeah, this is something that comes up. Like, it wouldn't come up a lot with me in clinic, but it definitely is. It's there. It happens, and that's why I think when you work in the space of people's relationship with food and their body image, that you need to be trauma informed. You need to be conscious of all of these reasons why somebody could be in that place of having a really negative or tested relationship with food.
What does disordered eating, because I know I used to say eating disorder, but I suppose it's disordered eating. What does that look like? When I think of it, I think of an anorexic woman, but how else can it manifest?
Yeah. Disordered eating comes on a spectrum. So you've got, say, intuitive eating, then you've got disordered eating, and then you've got eating disorders. And disordered eating can be anything from, say, okay, let's say you hear that bananas are high in sugar. This is a thing that was going on for ages. And you kind of wonder, is that true? And you might think about it every time you go to eat a banana, but it doesn't stop eating the banana, and you forget about it afterwards. That would be very mild disordered eating. Whereas, say, a question I usually ask in clinic is, if you think of your brain as a pie chart, and if I asked you what percentage of your brain every day is taken up thinking about food or your body, what would that percentage be? it's common for me to get anywhere from 70 to 90%.
Okay. That's how much are you thinking about food during the day and how it relates to your body? Fucking hell.
So that's when I would say it's more of a, it doesn't mean that there's anything seriously wrong with you. It just means that you have been a product of your environment. You know, we talk about food and weight everywhere, and diet culture is what's developed these disordered eating rates. And it can be healed. Like, it doesn't mean that you have a huge issue. It just means that maybe it needs a little bit of attention, because naturally, if you are thinking about food 70% of your day, that's taken away brain space from other things that you could dedicate your energy to: a relationship, a job, a hobby, personal development, you know, any interest that you have. And life is too short to have to, you do not have to do that to be healthy.
I noticed that if I've had a nap or if I have sex, I don't crave food the same way I did. Or if I exercise. So it's like exercise, sex, you could put them, and sleeping. Those three things, I don't crave snacks at all. And I imagine that people are sleeping less than they ever have.
Yeah.
How does it from I suppose a more technical point of view, how does lack of sleep affect appetite?
Oh, well, your appetite will increase, definitely. And this is the whole part of intuitive eating is increasing your interoceptive awareness. So
Interoceptive awareness.
yeah. So interoceptive awareness is when you need to go to the toilet. You don't plan that, do you? You don't go, oh, I'll need to go to the toilet now in 2 hours. It happens in the present moment. You get a signal from your body in the present moment, and then you respond to that by going to the toilet. So things like hunger, fullness, satisfaction, feeling tired, as well emotionally, like every emotion has a physical sensation. So like if you are feeling anxious and you get tightness across the chest, that's a sign from your body that there is a need that needs to be met. The need being, I need to calm my nervous system. Food is it might soothe in that initial moment, because remember, it creates primary safety, but it's not really going to solve the problem.
But it's so handy though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's hard to get a nap, to find somewhere quiet to have a sleep. It can be hard to have sex if you don't have a partner. And
there are other ways.
And, well, yeah, there are other ways. It's not, no, you're right. And the exercise is this activity of essentially doing something you don't want to do and delaying instant gratification for a brighter future. That could be an hour later or the next day or the rest of your life. And in this world of instant gratification, I feel like food is especially now that people are working from home.
Yeah.
And I have to use the P word, the pandemic. What have you seen be the effects of? What have you seen be the effects of? Kind of like a pirate there, of the pandemic on people's relationship with food.
I've definitely seen a lot more overeating, a lot more emotional overeating, because there are needs that are not being met. The biggest thing that's coming up is social connection. Like, that comes up so much in clinic. Like, people are lonely. Like, we've all probably been lonely over the last year at some stage. And social connection is a basic human need. If that need is not being met, food will fill the void. So it's about trying to bring an awareness to that, because we can't change without awareness, right? So if there is an awareness that, okay, I'm turning to food because there is a need that's not being met. You know, I usually ask people to ask themselves 3 questions when it comes to emotional overeating. Am I hungry? Number 1. Could just be a physical need. I could just be hungry. Number 2, how do I feel? Like, really trying to check in with emotions, how I feel in my physical body. Am I tired? Am I sleepy? Am I lonely? Am I angry? And then what do I need? And is food going to fulfill this need?
This is like a checklist that you should be doing before you eat.
Yeah. Now, this is like this takes time.
Yeah.
But back on to that instant gratification piece that you mentioned, again, I feel like this is our relationship with movement is another thing that is really important. Like, and I say movement rather than exercise because I feel like movement encompasses so much more. And exercise often has this negative connotation with it, like it's a chore, like it's something that we have to do rather than something we want to do. And therefore we resent it when we have to do it. Mm-hmm. So like years ago, I hated exercise. Like I was like a perpetual dieter when it came to exercise, and I tried everything. I tried spinning, bums and tums, swimming, running, and every time I was like, this is going to be different. This time it's going to stick. And it was like that delayed gratification piece, that you mentioned. Like, it's going to be good for my health. I need to do this for my health, but I don't really want to do it right now. I have to every time pull myself out of the bed or like peel myself off the couch to go for a run. And when I was introduced to yoga, because I was going through something particularly difficult at the time, and I didn't go to yoga class because of I had to do it or because it was exercise. I went for my mental health, and that changed everything. And then I was doing a yoga teacher training within 6 months. I remember sitting in that first class and just being like mind blown. Like, what is this? Why was I never introduced to this before? And it was this level of acceptance. You know, I'd been used to being in boot camps and like people shouting at you, which I just don't respond to. Like, I will walk out.
Yeah.
I'm such a little rebel. Like, I'll just leave. And I love that. Like in a yoga class, I can sit back in child's pose if I want to. There is this complete attitude of non-judgment. At least in the classes that I generally go to, in the classes and any classes that I teach, like, check in with yourself. How are you feeling today? Do you need to take a little break, or do you need to push yourself a little bit? Because we can be lazy too sometimes. You know, we need to, when we've got the energy. And so it's this constant dance, isn't it? Of like playing your edge and understanding your body and what your needs are. But in previous forms of exercise, I wasn't given that permission. It was go hard or go home. And life happens. You're not going to have like buckets of energy every day. So I think this is where if we focus on our relationship with movement and we flip our mindset a little bit and we allow those days to happen, it changes everything. Because then I can sit back and I can do, you know, something soft and gentle if I'm feeling tired, or I can push it and feel amazing afterwards. Yeah,
I think I kind of veer on this side of pushing it because I'm naturally a very undisciplined person. And like growing up, I was very unruly. So I'm hard on myself to counter that. But I feel there's a over saturation, especially on things like YouTube, of grind every day.
Yeah.
You know, what have you done today to be 1% better and all this stuff? And speaking of the patriarchy, this is a very masculine trait, to dominate even yourself all the time and never give an inch. Yeah. Whereas there should be, and it's the same probably with the not diet but nutrition, there should be some leeway.
Yeah.
Otherwise you just, as you said, you kind of snap and you binge, for example. So does dieting sometimes work?
In long term, no.
No. Okay.
So like we all know that when you go on a diet, you will lose weight, but for how long is the question? So we don't have one study, not one. I'll say that again, not one.
That's good. Very dramatic.
That shows us that dieting is successful in the long term. And when I say long term, I mean 4+ years. So with all of the dieting research, we can see that you can assume that in the first 6 months of any weight loss or diet lifestyle change, weight will come down and it will hit its lowest point, usually around 6 months. People can then maintain that weight loss for about a year, and then after a year the weight will start to come on and it will increase over time. And I can see it in clinic, and like all of the people that I worked with, like, I mean, I did a workshop with 100 women about 3 months ago, and I asked them, has dieting delivered on its promises? And it was like, there was no yeses, like it was like, no. And I asked, how is your weight now compared to when you first started dieting? Which, by the way, I think about 80% of the group were 15 plus years dieting. And 78% of the group said they were heavier than when they started.
Wow.
And that's reflected in the research.
Is that why, you see, I when I used to run boot camps, I was that guy, you know.
You were that guy I hated.
Come on, Mary, stay in plank. Poor old Mary's like sweating in the rain. I put a post up saying, and you do take on this drill sergeant role because it kind of goes with the territory. But I put this post up on Facebook where I was criticizing Weight Watchers, and one of the attendees of the boot camp took me to task over it on Facebook, saying that he went to Weight Watchers and it was a game changer for him because it helped to in the first step. But so have you heard that before? Like, is that possible? Like, you know, like he can take that first step into Weight Watchers, but then it's maybe not sustainable to stay with Weight Watchers, because I imagine they're so successful, and I could be wrong, because people keep going back.
Yeah.
Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah. So think about, like, if you bought a hairdryer. Sorry, Kevin, I realise that you probably don't buy hairdryers. But if you buy...
How dare you?
Okay, let's just... I always just use a hairdryer for some reason in clinic. Say you buy a hairdryer and it breaks after 3 months or 6 months. You're like, this is a shitty hairdryer.
Yeah.
You don't blame yourself for the shitty hairdryer. You blame the product. But with dieting, what happens is we blame ourselves. I mustn't have stuck to it. I must have done something wrong. There must be something wrong with me. Why can't I keep the weight off and everyone else can, which they can't. It's a lie. And yes, like, I've heard of stories or actually directly as well of people who've maybe done Weight Watchers and lost, or Slimming World or any of those weight loss plans, and lost a lot of weight and kept it off. But I asked them then, what's your life like? How is your relationship with food? Do you spend 80% of your day thinking about food? Do you worry about it? Is there a constant regime that you need to maintain to keep that weight off? And is it very controlled? So say I don't get to the gym one day. Do I fall apart? Do I have this fear that comes over me then that the weight will come back on? And I don't think that that's successful.
Great point.
Like, I see it in clinic all the time. And sometimes, you know, like, there is no denying that diet and lifestyle does have an effect on your weight, but it's only a small percentage. Like 80% of your weight is determined by genetics.
Okay. That doesn't surprise me.
Like, whereas...
Because I know people that eat crap all the time and they're very slim.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I think is it 70 or 80% of our height is determined by genetics too. But you don't hear anyone going around saying, I'm really working on my height this year. Like, we would think they're ridiculous. Like, like, I would love to be 5'8". Like, forget about it. It's not going to happen in my lifetime. I need to just accept that I'm a short arse, and that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
But it's this big myth that we can control and morph and shape our bodies to fit into the ideal. And it affects, it not that it doesn't affect men, because it absolutely does, but it affects women at a different level, and it keeps women small. It really does. Small.
Physically?
No, like mentally. It keeps them small, because if you have 80% of your brain space every day is gone thinking about food and your body image, right? And then if, say, Sheryl Sandberg, she's the CEO or COO of Facebook. Yeah. And she has a book called Lean In. And she describes this hypothetical situation in which, say, you have a man and a woman in the home, and the woman does 60% of the housework, minding the kids, and the man does 40%, which probably in today's age would seem like a good split. That's still 20% extra that man has to dedicate to his career or his extra interests. So if you add that with the fact that most women have a huge amount of their brain space every day taken up thinking about food in their body, is it any wonder that we don't have equality? There's no space. There's no space for looking at your career or getting that promotion because all the brain space is gone. There's no room.
So, speaking about food, and you mentioned the social side of food, I read this study once that took 3 groups of people, and one group ate their lunch around a table with other people, talking, and they had no time restrictions. The other group of people ate their food watching Friends. Well, it could have been any TV, but it was Friends. And the other group of people ate their food, but they had to walk up and down a corridor at a certain pace, and from one end to the other. And it just showed that the people in the first category digest their food a lot more efficiently. I think they digest their food a lot more efficiently, and therefore were able to use the food more effectively, as it were. And this is something that is sometimes not thought about, is how quickly you're eating or how slow you're eating. And if you're actually looking at the food you're eating, so you're sending that signal from your brain to your body that this is what I'm going to eat, this is how much saliva I need, this is how many times I need to chew it, how hard I need to chew it, and in between I'm going to pause, and I'm actually enjoying the experience, as opposed to this is my chicken and broccoli and I'm getting so many calories, I'm eating my macros for the day, and I'm eating it in my car while watching a video on YouTube, or even worse, I'm rushing to the gym or away from the gym. So with this, what's happened in the last year, would it be fair to say that people have now isolated a lot more, looking at screens a lot more, eating on their own, can affect weight gain?
Yeah, totally. And you have literally just described intuitive eating there, in terms of that external source of busyness, distraction, eating in the car, eating while working, answering emails. It's bringing the attention outside. It's external. This is the portion that I need to eat. These are the calories that I need to have, with complete disconnection from what the body needs. Like, our hunger levels will vary from day to day. Our cravings will vary from day to day. We don't need a certain amount of calories every day. Like, we're not robots. We have a mind and a body. But the external kind of rules around food just speaks to the mind, doesn't speak to the body at all. Whereas paying attention to your food, really being connected about how it tastes, how it smells, how it looks, chewing it, slowing down eating, that's intuitive eating. It's being more connected to the eating experience. And when we're connected and when we're listening, we'll notice, oh, I'm getting a bit full here. Am I okay to finish? Can I finish eating now? Whereas if we're disconnected and we're sitting in the car, we'll just finish what's on our plate.
You overeat then?
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
me and Rach used to take a moment before every meal to be grateful for something, but we've stopped doing that now because we always just say we're grateful for each other, or like we're grateful for the food or grateful for the baby. You just run out of things to be grateful for. So it got repetitive. So what we do instead now is we take a deep breath together. We do the same when we go to bed. We do the 4, 7, 8 breathing. We do 5 rounds of that every night in bed, right? But we take a breath before food, and this has helped us to slow down. We also never watch TV while we're eating, ever, or no screens. We talk to each other, and then once the food is done, we can turn something on if it's the evening time, and we can watch something. Music is fine as well, but it's that thing of looking at your food. Now, people might think you're mad saying this, but for me, now that you've said all of this, it makes complete sense. I was made aware of something yesterday, right? Someone, let me rephrase this. Okay, someone I know, right? I'm worried about them, basically, and their weight. And essentially they have lost a lot of weight, right? My question is, how do you approach someone, or how do you speak to someone who is maybe they're not a friend, maybe they're an acquaintance, and you want to ask them, what can you need to help yourself. What's a way of going about that while being tactful and gentle?
If it is kind of, you feel like there could be an eating disorder taking hold, the worst thing to do is to highlight that for them, because if it is the case of control, whether that is restriction or binging or anything like that, that might be their coping mechanism. You've no idea what's going on behind the surface. And especially in the case with anorexia, actually, and I'm not an eating disorder specialist, and I'll say that now, I work with disordered eating, but not, with anorexia, say, that would need inpatient treatment. It would need a multidisciplinary team. But the last thing that person wants to do if they're not ready is release control. So they will probably shut you down. They just won't talk about it. So I would be maybe being there for someone and asking them, how are you? Like, this is coming back to mental health conversation, isn't it? And trying to not highlight the obvious, the elephant in the room, but just talk around that. Because if you highlight something that is really important to them, which anorexia, it's a coping mechanism, it developed for a reason. It may have saved someone. They're not going to want to let that go until they're ready to do it. And this is the case with any sort of addiction, isn't it?
Yeah, because so just to get an idea of that spectrum, you have intuitive eating at one end, in the middle you have disordered eating, and at the other end of the spectrum you have eating disorders.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in that situation with the eating eating disorders, it's a bit misleading because really it's a psychological or mental disorder, isn't it? Okay, right. Yeah. Because the easy thing to say is, oh, you should eat more.
Yeah.
That would be the easy thing to say, like if you weren't well versed in this subject at all. But it could be, as you said, an emotional trauma that experienced before. And I suppose when you're with your food, it gives you an element of a feeling of control, doesn't it? Especially in the last year, since we've been so out of control. We're like, well, the one thing I can do is be conscious of what I'm taking into me food-wise. That is right. That is your food diet. But what I've been really aware of now is how social media must affect this. Because when I was growing up, there was people lobbying against Cosmopolitan magazine, saying, like Kate Moss said, because I'm like 40, as I told you, I'm going to be 40 soon, and Kate Moss said, nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. Skinny feels.
Yeah.
So that, once again, that's nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. She said this is like kind of a cool catchphrase. And there was a big thing against, well, look at these stick thin models and you're telling girls this is what they need to be like. And that's a magazine that comes out maybe once a month and you occasionally see on a shelf. But now you have these constant images in your on your phone. What have you seen in terms of how social media affects eating disorders?
Yeah.
Or disordered eating?
Yeah. So, like, there's a phrase I use in clinic, and it is, no one steps into a diet because they think they're shit hot. Everyone steps into a diet because they feel like their body is not enough as it is. And where are they getting all these ideals from? Like, if you go onto your Explore page on Instagram, you will quickly get an idea of what an ideal body is. Like, the beauty ideal. But that's shifted and changed. The problem is that the goalposts shift. Like, it's great that you're after bringing up Kate Moss, actually, because in the 90s, it was Kate Moss was the ideal, the teeny tiny, stick thin. And then it moved to the Kardashians 15 years later. Now it was skinny, but only skinny in the right places, and curves, but only curves in the right places. It's impossible to keep up with this, but it makes a lot of money for a lot of people. So a question that, when it comes to body image, I always ask people to ask themselves when they are purging their social media, which is something I get people to do a lot. Does this post make me feel bad about myself? And who is benefiting from me feeling bad about myself? Usually diet industry, beauty industry, anything that kind of preys on people's vulnerabilities. So one of the biggest things actually that people say at the start of an intuitive eating journey that makes them feel so much better about their here and now body is to purge their social media. Get rid of anything that makes you feel like shit, basically. And really question what you're consuming, because you can control that. You can control what you're bringing into your feed every day. And follow like more diversified shapes. If you are constantly seeing a body size that doesn't look like yours, of course you're not going to feel enough, because this is what you're seeing every day. Whereas if you have all shapes and sizes, you know, people are beautiful in loads of different ways. It's just a myth that you can only be beautiful if you look like this.
Purge your social media. This is like people talk about diet as in what you eat, but it's important to appreciate what your information diet is.
Yeah.
What are you? And I'm guilty of this because I think that anger is more intoxicating than love. I think that, or hate is more intoxicating than love. Anger is more intoxicating than joy, because we want to be aware of what can kill us more than what can keep us ticking along. It's that what do you call it? Negative bias, or I forget what the actual it's called. ANS, an acronym. It's like basically the fact we all have a negative bias in our head. Where that's why the reason why the news is always bad news, because we're like, what's need to be worried about? I subscribe to a good news channel and I unsubscribe in about 5 minutes because I'm like, I don't care if people are like getting on fine. It's not going to affect me, you know. Whereas I want to know, what do I need to be aware of around the corner. So unfollowing people, but also as well is to, I suppose, get off your phone. And I have a smartphone. Everyone has a smartphone. And I was talking to a friend yesterday about getting a Nokia 3310 or something. Yeah. But then it doesn't have WhatsApp. Yeah. So this is and WhatsApp I need for my social engagements. So many of them. No, but God, WhatsApp is so it's so hard to get away from the phone. But I have studied or read a lot about how the phone affects people and how it affects particularly females compared to males, especially preteens. Jonathan Haidt has a book called The Coddling of the American Mind, and since 2014 he's noticed that there's been there's the data to support it, a huge surge in preteens harming themselves, females, not males. And what males would do is, men and women both experience aggression. Men typically express it physically. Women typically express it verbally, or through like reputation destruction or relationship destruction. And I have friends, I won't say who they are, but they're kind of high profile on Instagram, and they get messages saying kill yourself, like from other women. But then I'm not saying it's just women, it's men can be that way as well, because you're putting yourself out there as a physical thing. You know, Instagram is like, what is so much value is on what you look like, obviously, because it's a photography platform. Therefore you're opening yourself up to take criticism. And that, even though it's often from an account with no picture and no bio, but I had someone on YouTube say I was a serial killer, right? Say there was a comment on my YouTube video, one of these podcasts I did. It's like, look at his eyes, you can tell he's clearly a serial killer. I was like, that's a bit much. But like, these little digs can actually really hurt you, you know, especially if you don't have any real social. Yeah. Because I feel like you cannot get rid of a smartphone unless you completely. But maybe, and I'm interested to hear what you think about this, maybe you can counter it by just having more in-person experiences.
Yeah, totally.
And more. So just on that, why do you? I noticed your Instagram bio says helping women to. I forget what the actual term you used. You said women. And I was like, oh, not men. Now that's fine. It's not sexist or anything. But I'm wondering why women and not men.
So I help women to heal from dieting and rebuild their relationship with food and body image. And the reason why is because naturally, my client list is female. Of course it it affects men too, but men are not as exposed to as many expectations based on their body that women are. That is not to say that men don't struggle. Like, I have had a few men. It happens. But it's not as... It just doesn't happen as often. Now, I think there's another piece of the puzzle here of men probably don't reach out as much as women do because of this, you know, like toxic masculinity and all that. But from a young age, there's two body image researchers in the States. They're called Lindsay and Lexi Kite. And they've dedicated their whole career to body image. And they explain about how from a very young age, girls understand or are taught that there is value in their body. Whereas boys are not exposed to the same level of expectation. You know, it's, oh, he's a hardy little boy, isn't he? And like, it's more based on their achievements or more about who they are than about their physical being. Whereas, you know, like, say, for example, a young girl maybe hears her mother and her aunties talking about their body and how they need to lose weight or they're after putting on a few pounds. And when we look at family history, because that's something that I do a lot in clinic, because your family history has a huge impact on your relationship with food and body image as an adult. And I asked the question, did one or both of your parents ever diet frequently? And I do get dad, but rarely. It's always, yeah, ma'am. So that's why it affects women more than it affects men. And this is all feeding down from the patriarchy. You know, this might seem like a big, like it's you know, a big controversy, but it's true. Like this is not surface level. This is systemic.
Yeah, I mean, no, I think using the term patriarchy is fine. I think but patriarchal behavior doesn't necessarily have to come from men.
Totally.
I mean, men can exhibit matriarchal behavior. I mean, you said toxic masculinity. How does that apply in this context?
As in men reaching out for help.
Oh, as in they shouldn't?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like food is a woman's issue. I'm a man, I shouldn't have issues with food.
I found that as a man, the more you can eat, the more masculine you are, almost. It's like, you know, I can really put my grub away. Like I can put my pints away. This is a badge of honour to be able to eat a lot. And getting fat is actually, sorry to interrupt you, but getting fat is, as a bloke, is a bit like, oh, that's just kind of what happens, you know?
Yeah.
A bit of
more acceptance.
More acceptance, yeah.
And again, if we look at aging, you know, it's more acceptable for men to age than it is for women to age. When it comes to women, you should do everything you can not to get wrinkles. Whereas a man, it's like, a man is sexy when he ages, or he's like a silver fox, you know, all of these other connotations. And Christy Harrison, she's a dietitian in the States, and is it Christy Harrison or is it Alyssa Rumsey? One of them anyway. In one of their books, I can't remember which because I've read so many of them at this stage, and she says men don't age better than women, they're just allowed to age. And when I read that, I was like, whoa, that's true.
To delve into that, and I think that may be because women are... Okay, if you to boil it all down, why are we here on this earth? Any living organism, whether it's a human or a piece of bacteria, their job is to procreate, is to reproduce. And a woman can only do that until a certain age. Well, a men can do it a lot longer than women can. Now, that doesn't mean, and I'm aware of this because I've spoken at length with Helena Tubridy, who specialises in fertility. If you're an old fella, doesn't mean your sperms are very good, by the way, chaps. So don't be getting complacent out there. You know what I mean? It's biological age, not chronological age that matters, right? But I think maybe that's why there's a ton of ageism in society that never gets talked about.
Yeah.
We talk about loads of other isms, but ageism is a huge one that is going to affect us all if we're lucky enough to get old. And when you're an old fella, I think maybe it's almost like, you know, your granny or your granddad, your granddad's like, they're done now. They can't reproduce anymore, so they can't work anymore. We think anyway, and therefore they're to be put in the corner. Whereas in society, so much value is given to the young, fertile-looking female.
Yeah.
And maybe that has something to do with it, but definitely then it's reinforced by commercial gain, because you're playing on people's insecurities, aren't you? Like I hear my mum talk about getting anti-wrinkle cream and this hair dye and getting her eyebrows done, all this kind of stuff. And what we're trying to do is delay getting old, which we'll try and do that to some degree, but it's capitalizing on our fear.
Do you ever hear a man like talk about wrinkle cream as much as women?
No. I'm trying to find a comparison to men, but there isn't one. I mean, I play football with a bunch of lads, and there's nothing really. The most important thing with lads really is, with men, I find, is your status.
Yes.
You know, who's the best on the team, who has the best, the most kids, the most money, the best, social status is really, really important amongst men, it seems. But I wonder, like, in these social circles, like, what's happening to people to reinforce this idea of you're not good enough, and therefore you need to eat a certain way. Do you think that? So say that example we're talking about this, trying to help someone. If you can't say to them, right, eat more food or eat less food, you can't say, you can't give them advice if you haven't experienced it as well. So therefore, it's wiser to simply ask them how they are.
Yeah. Bodywise actually has some great freebies on their website on how to talk to loved ones who have eating disorders. So if there is anyone listening, that's a really good place to go.
Bodywise.
Yeah.
Okay.
BODY WHYS.
Okay.
And I think they do some events as well, actually, for supporting loved ones with eating disorders. So they're kind of like I think they're state owned. So that's the best place to go for information on that.
Okay. I think what else do I want to ask you? The other thing I want to ask is, when I think of disordered eating or eating disorders, I think of someone who's really thin. And I find the visual of someone who's really thin more distressing than the visual of someone who's really overweight, because it looks like they're closer to death. Firstly, what does disordered eating, I hope I'm using the right terms, but does it look more like generally a thinner person or a more overweight person?
It doesn't discriminate. So like I work with people in a size 6 and a size 36.
Okay.
And
is it around a 50-50 split, would you say?
God, yeah. Like I work with people in all shapes and sizes, and when people come to clinic with me, it's really important in any professional capacity for me to give people a safe, non-judgmental, shame-free space. Whereas I don't look at you as a body. I'm seeing past your body. So I don't care what size you are. I'm going to treat you the exact same way. And disordered eating doesn't discriminate. And when I say disordered eating, it might seem quite like it's a big issue, but it's so common. I mean, if we look at women, and I'm saying women because we have more statistics when it comes to women. We don't have that much with men, unfortunately, at the moment. But every 3 out of 4 women have some level of disordered eating.
3 out of 4?
3 out of 4. So like I use the banana example, that could be considered disordered eating. Or binging could be considered disordered eating. If it is distressing you at all, or you feel like it's taking time from your life, you deserve to seek attention and to seek support. Doesn't mean you have an eating disorder. It doesn't mean there's anything seriously wrong with you. We all need a little bit of support in our lives at different stages. And you know, to be able to give back. I mean, I came off a call this morning, and I've been working with this girl for a while now, and we were just kind of reflecting on our time together, and I asked her, like, what's now possible for you that wasn't possible in the past because of this work? And her first thing was more headspace. I have got a new job and launched a business in the last few months that before wasn't possible for me, because I was spending so much time thinking about food and my body.
Yeah.
And when she came to me, I wouldn't have said her disordered eating was really intense and it was taking over her life and there was binging and there was all this. There was none of that. But it was headspace. It was this feeling of not being good enough, and that was it was taking from other areas of her life. So yeah, she said to me this morning, like, it's life-changing, and it is.
You know, actually, I was watching This Is Us, which is a fantastic TV show on Amazon Prime, and we watched one episode every evening, and one of the characters is really obese. And is it PC to say morbidly obese, or is that kind of frowned upon?
I don't actually use any of the O words.
What do you say then if someone's like really overweight?
I would say living in a larger body.
It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? No pun intended. No. Yeah. Okay. She's living in a very large body, right? So she is, and it's weird how, like, I haven't known anyone really that overweight before. I don't know her. Sorry, this is on TV, right? But the character's played so brilliantly, and she's a fantastic actress, that it showed situations throughout her childhood and stuff that made me realise, fucking hell, like, it's so hard for someone. When I was younger, I would have said, just eat less and move more. I would have said that because I didn't realise that psychological, the mental baggage and before all of that. And anyone who hasn't seen it, This Is Us. It's fantastic. It's really, really brilliant. Rach cries like every episode, so like it's really emotional and it's really good. But just as a kind of side point, but just on one thing I wanted to ask you before we wrap up is, food can be almost like, depending what diet you follow, like a religion.
Oh, yeah.
I've been on this buzz it's in my mind lately about religion and how, because we live in a society now, which once upon a time Ireland was very religious. Now it's not so much. I mean, I think during COVID, mass was actually banned for like months. And so people are seeking other things to be part of. And this could be carnivore diet, paleo diet, vegan diet. Is there any any truth in that?
Yeah, there's a book called The Religion of Thinness, and it just describes exactly what you've just said about how dieting is. And when I say dieting, right, a diet is anything that restricts what, when, or how much you eat. So that covers a lot of different things. And I can't remember the author's name now, but she speaks about, the 10 commandments of the pursuit of thinness. And it's so similar to a religion. So, things like, the creed, how you eat. So whether that is no meat or, all protein or whatever it is, there's a set of rules to follow. And she talks about the community side of it as well. Like, community is a big thing. Like, I've spoken to people who have gone to weight loss groups for 20 plus years, but they're going just for the social connection of it, for this feeling of being connected with others that are experiencing the same things as them. But unfortunately, we all know that being a part of something, and religion can be a great thing for someone to have in their life, faith. But when the results are destructive, i.e. through dieting, it's not really great for that person to stay in that environment. So, like, what I'm starting now is support groups for people on their intuitive eating journey that have worked with me, because I'm trying to develop this community of people where they're safe, where there are no rules. There are guidelines, but there's no rules. You can eat meat, not eat meat.
Yeah.
Have cake every day, not have cake every day. Like, it's this acceptance of everyone has a space. So yeah, absolutely, it's definitely similar to a religion. Great book if anyone is interested.
What is it called again? Something thin?
The Religion of Thinness.
Religion of Thinness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was a vegan once, and then I did it all the carnivore diet as well. I've tried loads of different ones, and I like to think now I'm an intuitive advocate. I think I am. But because to be really honest, when I was growing up, we had, like, I would be a bit insensitive about like someone's weight, you know, not in a mean way, but you know, I would call like another lad, say like in the football team we're playing or whatever, and someone was slow and they were overweight, you go, oh, come on, you fat bastard. You just say like, fat bastard. You wouldn't think about it. Mm-hmm. It's a bit like growing up when you say, oh, that's so gay. Mm-hmm. And you didn't realise that you're hurting someone's feelings because you just weren't, you were your child, you know, so you don't know. But when I was slightly overweight, like 15 years ago, my dad made me feel shame by saying like, you've really let yourself go and you've put on weight around your chin, around your belly stuff. And I jokingly said once, you know, he fat shamed me. But the difference there is that I wasn't eating because I felt bad about myself. I didn't experience any real trauma that caused me to overeat. It was more so that I just got stuck in a bit of a rut. And I don't want to make it something bigger than it was. So when he gave me that bit of shame, it was a kick up the backside for me, right? But that's not going to work for probably most people, because that feeling of shame, not everyone's overeating for the same reasons or undereating for the same reasons. This is why I used to think it was, excuse me, a blessing that my dad said this to me, because no one else would. You know, it's an awkward thing to say to someone, look, you're overweight, you need to sort it out. You know, it's an awkward thing to say. But it worked for me because everyone is completely unique in their situation. So just go on.
You're bringing up such an important topic here, Kevin, and that's weight stigma. And weight stigma is alive and kicking. And weight stigma affects people's health. Like, your weight does not equal your health. Just because you are a certain weight does not mean that you are unhealthy. So you can have a thin person that fits the thin ideal and is really unhealthy, and you can have someone in a larger body that will be considered unhealthy, but have a perfectly clean bill of health. And we have studies that show that when we look at health promoting behaviours, because weight is not a behaviour, weight is a byproduct of behaviours. And sometimes, a lot of the time as well, because remember, 70%, 80% of your height or of your weight is determined by genetics. It's eluding me now as to what the exact percentage is, but some people are we're all born in different shapes and sizes. Some people are just in bigger bodies. Doesn't mean that they're unhealthy, doesn't mean that they need to fix it. But it's society's expectations that are pushed on us that then pushes people into this feeling of, if I don't have thin privilege, you know, like, I was born with thin privilege. It's not something I earned. And a lot of people are just born with thin privilege. Some aren't. And this is where weight stigma comes in, because of this idea that certain body shapes and sizes are unhealthy. But if we can focus on health promoting behaviours, we know that people in all three BMI categories can have the same disease risk if they have 4 health promoting behaviours in their life, being eating your fruit and veg per day, getting regular movement, drinking alcohol in moderation, and not smoking. If somebody has all 4 of those health promoting behaviours down, you have the same disease risk as someone in the normal BMI if you are in the upper, you know, I don't want to use the O words, but overweight and obese.
Do you think, though, that we're becoming too sensitive? For example, there was a Cosmopolitan cover with a lady who was living in a very large body, and there was 2 sides saying, you're endorsing being very, very overweight, or you're showing acceptance for all body types. So, well, firstly, what do you think about having all that on a, having that on a, I say that sounds like I'm not objectifying, but well, my stance is, I think, especially having I've got a daughter, is that it's good to show different body types, different types of people. What are your thoughts?
Yes, that's Callie Thorpe. That was on was it Cosmopolitan?
Is she the lady with all the tattoos?
No, that's Tess Holiday.
Tess Holiday.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that was just a pure depiction of weight stigma. It's like, that's so unhealthy. You know, we can't be showing, like, endorsing obesity, da 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 da. But yet, you put someone on a cover that's stick thin, that could be anorexic.
Yeah.
But just because that person looks a certain way, you're not endorsing unhealthy behaviours. That is actually pushing kids, young girls, to do things like restrict and not eat and take on behaviours to fit an ideal of the girl on the cover. Whereas if young girls can see like people like Callie Thorpe and other people in thinner bodies, that everyone is represented, I mean, I think that is amazing for helping contribute to young girls, especially developing a positive body image.
I agree, but I think it's important to have people that look different on covers and promoted. But I also think it's equally important to say, look, this is not, there is an optimal weight. I mean, you feel free to disagree with this, but surely for your height, and obviously we all have a different starting point. Some people usually have thin privilege, but there is a sweet spot that of weight to be in for optimal health, and you can choose. Just because you may not be in that, there's no reflection on your character, and you may be the optimal weight, and you might be miserable, and everything else in your life is falling apart. So that's not success either. But don't you think we have an obligation to, especially with raising children, to say to them, look, we should celebrate all body types, but there is an optimal way to be healthy when it just purely height to weight ratio.
We have an obligation to promote health promoting behaviours. We have an obligation to teach kids how to be healthy irrespective of their weight. I feel like if we start attributing weight to health, we're always striving for weight, we're not striving for health.
That's a really good point. So what you're saying is like we're not focusing on the goal, as it were, but more so the habits and how we. That's a really good point, because then if we address the habits, if we it's going to lead us towards living a healthier life in general. And that's actually back to the point you said. So I know we're going over a little bit, but back to the point about people think health and well-being, and I was the same way, is exercise and diet. It's like, how many times a day do you laugh? How are you sleeping? Are you having sex? Are you getting hugs in? But are you getting sunlight? Are you reading? And what are you watching? Who are you listening to? These are all things that are not considered when it comes to the fitness industry, for example. No. At all. You
can't eat like me, exercise like me, look like me. It's not possible. And diet and lifestyle only contributes to about 15 to 20% of your health outcomes. Like, there are so many different determinants of health. So if we can, inject joy back into food and inject joy back into movement and teach our kids that all food's fit, and we're going to go out and play and we're going to move our bodies because it's fun and because we're connecting with each other and because, not because it's trying to control our weight. It just pushes people in the opposite direction.
Yeah. It's funny how, Niamh, like some of the things I've said them because I've thought that before, but once I've said them, it's a bit like confession in I realise they're wrong. Yeah. Do you know? Like, I just never talk to anyone about this kind of thing. I just have it in my subconscious about your weight.
Yeah.
I don't own a weighing scales now, and I don't remember weighing myself ever because I realised that it didn't tell me much about myself. So yeah, that's a really good point. So to get rid of the weighing scales.
100%.
Get rid of the weighing scales and go out and meet people.
Yeah.
Isn't it? And enjoy moving, enjoy playing, as you said.
Yeah.
And eat together. Like, I know some Italians that long story, but they'll have dinner for like 3 hours. You know, sitting around chilling.
Yeah.
They have the pasta, then they wait half an hour. I'm like, we're just having pasta, and then they have the meat after that, and it's
but like it's and again this aspect of play. You know, we tend to lose this connection with play as adults. But like when I talk about movement, I start talking about like what's fun, what's joyful. Is it doing cartwheels on the beach with your friend? You know, is it going surfing? Is it going to yoga class and feeling the energy of everyone else in the room? You know, it's not focusing on the external rules, but focusing on the experience and your internal world of how it makes you feel. And it changes everything. And it's the same at food. I mean, like I have clients with kids and we talk about maybe changing language around food and calling maybe what our society would call junk food as play foods and calling healthy food as growing foods, and teaching kids that we need both. You know, we need growing foods so that you can be strong and healthy and you can go out and play with your friends in the backyard, but we also need play foods because those foods are fun and we like having them. But if we have only play foods, we're not going to grow, are we? Like it's changing this narrative of good and bad, because the best thing you can do for kids is protect their relationship with food from a young age, and then as they grow they won't be exposed to all this language.
So when you're bringing the kid up, is to be mindful of the language you're using, but also give them a bit of ice cream here and there, you know.
Like I asked my mum when I kind of stepped into this space fully, and I was kind of intrigued about my own upbringing and how they spoke about food in our house. And like my mum never dieted. You know, she's a very healthy relationship with food. And she said, well, I don't know, sure, we just gave you whatever you wanted. Like, you know, it wasn't a big deal. She said, I remember when you were about 2, somebody saying to me at a parade or something that you had some chocolate. And this woman said to my mother, you shouldn't be feeding her chocolate. You know, she's only 2, she shouldn't be having any chocolate at all. Mom, she is like, goes in one ear and out the other. She's totally self-assured. She's like, this is who I am. And she was like, oh, she'll stop when she feels sick. And what that does is, I remember as a kid coming home from birthday parties and being like, Mommy, my tummy's so sick. Yeah, well, you won't do it again, will you?
Yeah, that's so true.
Letting them have their own experiences where they start to learn, okay, I love sweets, but if I go too far, I'll be in the toilet getting sick later. It's not gonna hurt them. But if we know that through studies as well, the more control parents place on their kids' eating habits, the higher the likelihood that child will be overweight.
That's so that seems like the opposite, doesn't it? This is I'm conscious of time. You need to wrap up. You just let me know. But I also want to say, Jonathan Haidt actually talks. The same guy, the Coddling the American Mind, talks about making kids anti-fragile and how he lets his children out. Like their young kids, lets them out, and he does have a tracking thing to know where they are, and they can report back. They can check in with him. But and other parents will like make him feel bad about this, going, it's a very dangerous world out there. You got to keep an eye on your kids. God forbid, what would happen if how would you feel if something happened to them? But then you're making them very fragile. It's the same thing with not wanting to upset people or kids. Because then they grow into adults that can't hear certain words or face disagreement, and they need safe spaces. And I mean, we should have physically safe spaces and spaces with we have mutual respect. But when the word safe space is like, I don't want to be upset, I don't want someone to hurt my feelings or to say something I disagree with. These adults are born out of kids that have been over parented. Yeah. And I think it's what you said there about food. I can see myself being that kind of parent because Rachel's mum, my soon to be mother-in-law, was like, oh, we're going to be giving her loads of ice cream when we're babysitting her. Niamh, I broke out in this cold sweat. I was like, oh no, my pure child. They're going to like give her loads of sweets and stuff. And I felt my heart sinking a little bit, like I want to give her the best of everything. Yeah. But I'm over-parenting because I'm trying to like not expose her to ice cream or chocolate. Whereas when I was 12, sorry Niamh, I got drunk for the first time. I don't think I got drunk again for like, 4 years. But but I remembered in my head, I was puking. I was at a party and I was 12 and I was puking Southern Comfort, I remember. But my mum could have told me, don't drink, but it took that experience to realise,
totally.
oh, fucking hell, it's horrible actually
Yeah.
when you get drunk.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, sorry?
Blank. It was really good too. It was on the tip of my tongue. But,
Overparenting?
Anti-fragile,
safe spaces, drunk 12-year-olds.
It was around the ice cream. Oh yeah, so Sinead and Gillian, they have a page on Instagram called Intuitive Eating Ireland, and they're amazing. They've created this community, yeah. And Sinead tends to share, you know, stories for kids, and I love watching it because I don't have kids, so I'm just really intrigued to see how intuitive eaters, like as kids, how it manifests. And she told the story one day of how her, I think he was 2 or 3 maybe, and he came in one morning and said, "Mommy, I want porridge, bread pesto and chocolate."
Jesus.
And she was like, you know, the internal, like, I can't get the child chocolate, it's breakfast time. So she was like, no, let's just use this as an experiment. So she sat him down, she gave him the porridge, the piece of bread with pesto and a square of chocolate. The child ate all the porridge, took a bite out of the bread and the pesto, took a nibble off the chocolate and left the table. So you, as a parent, you've not told them this is good, this is bad. Let's go back to, as human beings, when somebody tells us that we can't have something, we instantly think it's amazing because it must be amazing if it's forbidden, and then we want it more. So when that happens, you're damn right the kid's going to eat the chocolate. And if the chocolate is going to be restricted, or if it's only for Fridays or Saturdays or certain days of the week, or when they go to Granny's house, they will definitely overeat on the chocolate and the ice cream. Whereas if it's accessible all the time, actually they're not going to eat just chocolate all the time because they're more attuned to what happens in their body.
Yeah.
And like what you mentioned there about you know, that safe spaces piece as well. I remember what else I wanted to say. Because I'm doing a psychotherapy degree at the moment, and we talk a lot about we've talked a lot about kids and how, if, say, as parents, you don't want to fight in front of your kids, it's actually okay to fight in front of your kids. The most important thing to show them is conflict resolution. That, not protect them from anger and from emotions that we'd rather not feel, because they will experience those things throughout life. We all will. But to show them that we can resolve this conflict and how to do that, and so that they see it, so that when something really bad happens in their life, it's not like it's a disaster. You know, they can work through it.
Yeah, this is like, as a man, you know, instead of thinking I'm Superman, I'm always on top of my shit, if you can show your kid that you don't know it all, you're not the best, what you are is you're doing your best in a difficult situation, and no matter what comes, you'll do your best to overcome it, but you don't know what's going to come, as opposed to I'm always on top of it. Because then, as you said, when they're not on top of it, they'll think they failed.
Yeah.
As opposed to have you demonstrated overcoming adversity. It's really interesting because this goes against the whole anti-fragile thing. It's like being this fragile, anti-fragile, and there's one in between. But basically, anti-fragile is actually you get better through adversity.
Yeah.
You get better through that. And I've become really interested in this because I can see myself being the opposite. I can see myself over-parenting and wanting to control things too much, thinking you're doing the best, but you're not. You're really not. This is a fascinating topic, actually. And I've never thought about it in relation to food.
Yeah, totally.
I just thought surely the less sugar, the better, but that's not necessarily so. Niamh, I'm conscious of your time.
Thank you.
What's next for you? You're like hopping over the place doing podcasts and television stuff, and what are you doing next?
There's a lot in the plans for the next 12 months. I spend a lot of time in clinic. So I work one-on-one with people to help them rebuild their relationship with food, and in groups. But I kind of got to my capacity. So it's great to be oversubscribed, but now it's a real like purpose of mine. Like it's a real life purpose and passion to teach people that, you know, to kind of look at this, deal with it, fix it, move on, do great things in your life. And I want to help more people do that. So I'm in the process of kind of growing that out so that I am only one person at the end of the day. And one-to-one, there's only so many people that I can support. So I'm trying to, in the next 6 months, so watch this space, I'll be kind of building out to help more people. And yeah, just spread the non-diet message, which is a real passion of mine, that food doesn't have to be complicated and you don't need to diet your entire life and live by a set of external rules, that you have it all within. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Fantastic. The non-diet message. Thanks so much.
No problem. Thank you.